All right, so in class today, we're going to pull together some of the skills that we've been talking about in the past couple of classes and practicing, and we're going to talk about how to draw a face so that it is proportional using some of the skills that we got both from the Disney video where you were like setting everything up with shapes and guidelines and things to put everything in the right place, as well as what we did in the packet. You were like laying out shapes and guidelines in order to draw the individual facial features. Okay, so there's going to be a couple of times during class today that I'm going to ask you to look at your mirror to look at what parts of your individual face look like. I'm not necessarily drawing anyone in particular. I'm just laying everything out on the paper so that you can see where the different parts need to go. But when you draw yours, I will have you look at some specific things in the mirrors so that you can make yours look the closest to you that you are able to. Okay. The expectation here is that when you're done, you're not going to have a photograph quality picture that looks absolutely 100% like you. We're just practicing laying everything out using the correct proportions, and we'll get as close as we can for a first attempt. Okay. I don't expect first attempts to be perfect, but I also expect us to have good attitudes. Okay. So I know it's going to be hard. This is the hardest thing that I have asked you to do in here so far. I just ask you to try your best. Okay. Okay. So this is my example that I set up in another class. And we're going to talk about how I did everything, just laying out my proportions so that we can see where the parts on the face need to go. I'm going to give you general directions. Again, I'm not going to draw anyone specific, although I got done with the other class and someone told me that they think it kind of looks like my daughter. I wasn't necessarily doing that on purpose. I was just drawing a face in general. And we will set it up so that we can put your facial features where they belong in your face. We're not going to do all of the details for all of the facial features right now. We are going to just worry mostly about setting everything up on the paper where it needs to go, looking in the mirrors every once in a while to make sure things look on yours the closest to what your actual face looks like. And we will fill in more of the details in another class. When we are working today, though, we do want to kind of use the strategies that we used in the packet. So I'll kind of use those for the different facial features. So you're at least starting the different facial features the way you've already practiced. Okay. So let me get rid of this one. Let me get a new blank piece of paper so that we can start off together. Okay. So when you were doing the Disney drawings, depending on which character you did, I know that as I was walking around and looking at the different videos that certain people chose, some of the artists kind of suggested that to get the shape that you're looking for, instead of like just worrying about drawing a shape and making it absolutely perfect, that you can kind of have your hand go around in the shape that you want to make first to kind of get an idea of where you want the shape to go. And then you can lower the pencil and draw it on there. All of these lines that we are drawing right now, you want to draw pretty lightly because most of these lines that we're going to do today are not going to be there in your final drawing. But as we go through, if you need to go back later and fill something in, you can. If you were watching this as a video, I would tell you to like pause and go back as you need to, but all of these lines that you are drawing right now, you want to do very lightly so that you have the ability to erase them at the end, because we really don't need most of these. They're just helping us set it up. All right, so the first thing that I'm going to have you do, okay, is take a look at the oval that you just drew. Okay, and everybody's face is a slightly different shape. So when we get towards the end today, okay, on your oval, okay, look at where you think about the halfway point is. And you're going to take your pencil and you're just going to sketch a really light line going across your oval in the center. Again, draw really lightly. Then if you mess up, you can erase, and we don't need these at the end, so I'll be having you erase a lot of these lines anyway. Okay. Now look at just the bottom half of the face, okay? Look at where you think the halfway point is for just the bottom half of the face. Draw a second line lightly going across about halfway on the half of the half, a quarter, if you will. Yep. All right, and then we're gonna do one more. Look at the space that you have in the bottom here. Okay, draw one more guideline that's about halfway at the bottom. Okay, now I'm going to draw myself some guidelines going vertically on the paper. Okay, so I'm going to find about halfway across the face. Draw a light line going up and down about halfway vertically through the face. Okay, and then we're going to do some guidelines going up and down on each half also, but we want to start at the middle line. So I'm going to go over halfway on this half, draw a light guideline on this side here, and then do the same thing on the left side, find about the halfway point and draw a light guideline like that. Okay, so that's all the guidelines that we need for setting up where the different parts of the face go. From there, we're going to use those guidelines in order to sketch in where the nose and the eyes and the mouth are going to go. And ears for some of us, but we'll talk about that later. All right, before you start sketching in the nose, grab a mirror. So when you practiced drawing noses from the packet, you practiced by doing a circle in the middle and then two smaller circles on the side. Look at your specific nose though for a minute. Okay, everybody's noses are a slightly different shape. Maybe your nose is wider or taller, and maybe a circle is the shape that would make sense for you to draw for that middle shape there. Maybe your nose is like long and tall, so maybe for you it would make sense to draw more of an oval. But look at yours and decide what shape you think would make most sense for your nose in the middle. Okay, and again, this is just the middle part of your nose, so not the nostrils on the side, just the part that's in the middle. So you're pretty much deciding between a circle or an oval, because it is just this middle part of your nose. Okay, so in the middle of your paper, actually, so let me explain this first. So with the guidelines that we've drawn here, all of your facial features are going to be in the bottom half of your face, which I know probably seems like it's low, but we need this whole top of your head to show where your hairline is and give the illusion of the back of your head. So we need to put all your facial features down this low. Okay, so we are going to start off with the nose. Okay, so whatever shape you think works for the middle part of your nose best, you're going to sketch that in lightly here. Okay, so that it's sitting on the middle guideline. And then draw two little circles on either side. Okay, and again, we're not going to do all the details that you've practiced before or tried before. We are mostly setting it up so we have the major details, and we're going to go in and fill in some of the rest later. Yes.
Do they like collide right now?
Yeah, they overlap a little bit. All right. And then when you were practicing this before, we're not going to do all the steps, but we're going to do some of them. One thing that you did was you kind of traced along the bottom of the ovals and the circles to give that shape of the bottom of the nose. You can draw it a little darker in there. You can shade in just a little bit where each nostril is, not a lot. But shade in just a little bit more in those two opening spots there. After you've kind of sketched in down at the bottom there, you can just kind of draw, again, a little darker, just some lines right along the edge of your two smaller circles where your nostrils are. And then maybe just a little bit right here. Not the whole thing, just a little bit. And we'll do a little bit more with the nose in a minute, but for right now, we're just going to leave it like that. Again, just get the basics. If you need to go back in and add some more shading or adjust your nose a little bit, you can do that later. We're just kind of laying it all out right now so that we can go back and do more with it next class. Okay. All right. Next thing we're going to add on is we're going to add on our eyes. Okay. Now, when we draw our eyes in, the side of your eye that's the closest to your nose is going to start right about here at the same level as where your nose ends on both sides. So I'm just going to kind of draw a little light line in there. Okay. This guideline that you drew through the middle of the side of your face is going to be the middle of your eye. So kind of like eyeball how far over your eye should go so it's the same width from the middle where you drew before. Okay. So my eye starts here at the side of the nose. The middle of my eye will be about here where my guideline was. So I just kind of guessed that the other side of my eye should be about here so that this and this are the same length. We're going to sketch in the shape of the eye. So pick up your mirror again. Okay, take a look at what you think the shape of your eye looks like. Okay, now when we draw it in, what we're going to talk about, and you can kind of notice this as you're looking in the mirror, is your eye is almost a football shape, but not quite. Okay, kind of like how a parallelogram is almost a rectangle, but not quite, it like tilts over to the side. That's kind of how our eyes are too. It's almost a football, but not quite. It tilts over to the side. Okay. So notice whether you think your eyes are pretty wide, whether you think your eyes are pretty narrow. Pay attention for your eyes, whether you think it leans more in one direction than another, because everybody's eyes are a slightly different shape. Okay. So when I sketch them in, I'm going to put the middle of my eye right on this guideline. So I'm going to start right on the guideline. I'm going to draw the top of my almost a football shape, but not quite, but it's going to be leaning over towards the nose just a little bit. See how I did that? And then when I do the bottom, it's going to be almost the bottom of a football shape, but it's going to be leaning over away from the nose just a little bit. Okay. Then you're going to do the same thing on the other side to make it symmetrical, but we're going to do it the opposite way. Okay. So again, you're going to start on this line that would be right here by the nose. You're going to draw a football shape, but it's going to tilt in towards the nose a little bit, the top. And then the bottom Want to do the bottom of a football shape, but have it tilt away from the nose a little bit. Try to make your shapes as close to the same size as you can. So like mine are not, so I'm going to go back in and try to sketch around them a little bit to make them closer to the same size. But if they're not 100% the same, that's okay, because faces are not completely symmetrical either. Okay, again, and we're not going to fill in all the details for the eyes that you've done before. We're just going to do a few of them, and we'll go back and fill in some of the rest later. Okay, so when you're drawing eyes, when you do the iris part, so that would be the part where you have your color, okay? We cannot see the entire iris all at the same time, except maybe my kitten, because she like looks at you with these big eyes, like big buggy eyes. Sometimes you can see the whole thing, okay? Most normal people, though, when we look at them, cannot look at you in such a way that you see the entire iris at the same time. So when you draw it on, you're going to do part of a circle where you can imagine that the rest of the circle would continue up here, but we only see part of it. Okay, and the rest will be hidden behind your eyelid. Okay, the pupil or the black part of your eye, that part we can see the whole circle. Okay, you can look at the mirror if you want to get an idea of size, although honestly, the size of your pupil tends to change depending on how much light is in the room. You don't want to make it too super huge. You don't want to make it too super tiny. Okay, but you can draw a whole circle in the middle there for your pupils. We're going to draw just some light lines above and below the eye to kind of show where the eyelids are. The one above, okay, you can draw across, just kind of trace the shape of the eye a little bit to show where that eyelid is. Okay, you can do one kind of lightly underneath as well, but do it very lightly because otherwise it's going to make your person look really tired. Okay, and then from there, we didn't do a lot with the side of the nose, and we're not going to do a ton now either. Okay, and you may look in the mirror if you would like, or you can just take my word for it. Okay, when you're drawing your nose, the side of your nose almost comes like up and around to make where your eyebrow is. Okay, so what I'm going to do is by the side where my nose would be, I'm just going to sketch some real light lines to show like where the shading would be for the side of my nose. And then as I come up around the top of my eye, I'm just going to make the lines a little darker to show where my eyebrow would go. Okay, so same thing on the other side. If you miss this the first time, you can just watch for a minute before you try. Okay, so just sketching some real light lines to show where the side of the nose is going to go. As you get up above the eye, you can make them a little bit darker because that'll be where your eyebrow is. And again, how thick or thin or what shape your eyebrows are will be a little different depending on who you are. You can go back in and do more detail on that later. All right. Okay, we're going to move down to the mouth. And again, we're not going to do all the detail, but we want to lay out, guys. We're not going to do all the detail, but we're going to lay out the most important parts. Okay. When you practiced doing mouths before, you did so by drawing a little circle on top and then two little circles below it. Okay, so I did that on my bottom guideline. Draw a little circle above the guideline and two smaller ones below it, so that the middle of your mouth will be right on the center of that guideline. Okay, the mouth is going to go from the center of each eye. Okay, So the edge of the mouth will start here in the middle of this eye. It'll go all the way over to the middle of the second eye. Okay. Feel free to look in the mirror for a second at what your lips look like. Again, the shape is generally the same, but some of us have thinner lips, some of us have thicker lips. You might look at yours and notice that like the top part's thinner and the bottom part's thicker. Everybody's are a little bit different. Okay, so when you practiced, they had you start by kind of tracing. Trace the top, kind of like we did for the nose. The tops of those two circles that are there on the bottom. You can extend those over to your guidelines so that your mouth will go from the middle of each eye to the other middle of the other eye. To the top of your lip, you're going to make a little curved line like that, kind of through the middle of the circle. Yeah, kind of. Yep, you'll make it go up and then down to the side. And then up, down to the side. For the bottom part of the mouth, that bottom curved line is just going to come right below the bottom of those circles. Okay. Again, you can adjust the lines a little bit after you draw them down there as you need to. Okay, and as you're finishing that, I want you to think for just a second. So I'm just going to talk, just listen while you're finishing the mouth. Okay. All right, for your ears. Some of us will need to draw them and some of us will not. Okay. If you have shorter hair, long hair that you pull back, or long hair that you tend to tuck so it's behind your ears, you will need to draw your ears. Okay. If you have a hairstyle that generally covers your ears, you don't have to draw them because your hair usually covers them. Okay. Your ear is going to go from your eye line to your nose line. So on both sides, like this side, you're going to do almost like a backward C shape in between the guidelines for the eyes and the nose. And then do the same thing opposite on the other side. We're not going to bother with a lot of details right now, but you can draw like this top little line, which kind of traces the inside of what you just did. So the last part you need to think about is your hair. Okay. Some of us have hair that goes straight across. If you pull your hair back like me, it still kind of goes straight across because your bangs might be pulled back into your hair. Okay. Some of us have hair that kind of goes down to the sides, almost like a curtain. Okay. So if I'm drawing myself, I might draw a line across my forehead like this. Okay. If you have hair that is more of a curtain, then figure out where your part is. Okay, the place where your hair splits and goes in either direction. And then it might go more like this. Last thing I want you to do for today is to just kind of sketch in the shape of where your hair is.